Hi, and welcome to the show. There is now common sense being raised in CCISD. Finally, next year, there is going to be new rule changes to the 2023-2024 school year. What is that? That's going to be to where if you are a student in CCISD, you will be required to have clear backpacks. Now, I think it was last year they implemented a clear bag policy. CCISD is now mandating that all students bring clear backpacks. Just a few minutes, I'm going to show you the post I made on the Facebook group because everybody has their own opinions, and I'm going to read one comment. Actually, I'll read the comments on front. It's going to be a break, but take a look at what's going to happen.
School board members voting unanimously on that measure during last night's school board meeting. The new rule takes effect next year. District officials say this is a way to prevent students from bringing weapons to campus, vape materials, and anything that should not be brought to school.
Now, the district will put aside over $247,000 to help families in need by supplying those backpacks to schools district-wide. The 2023-24 school year will begin Wednesday, August 9th. By the way, we did check online at Amazon and Walmart. A clear backpack could cost you anywhere from $15 to $30.
We have even more details on that new development on our website, KIIITV.com.
Now, do you hear that? $15 to $30. Now, people may say, oh, we don't need clear backpacks. It's just parenting and talking to kids. Well, common sense alert. Okay? If we have parents talk to kids, what's going to do that? Talking to kids, lecturing your kids. Kids hate lectures. But if you're talking to your kids, it just basically means they don't want to hear it. But if we have clear backpack policies or have a no backpack policy, it would help out a lot. Now, moving forward to the post that I posted about, the day I heard about this, a lot of people may sit there and say, one person says, nope, clear backpacks have no evidence to lure any sort of crime or anything. But what does work, parents being involved, teachers being involved, and kids knowing what's right and wrong. Okay, we get that. I've heard that a dozen times. And nobody clearly understands anything. Talking to kids, knowing what's right and wrong. That's why discipline is happening. But what really, the common sense perspective of this is we need clear backpack policies. If we were to look up schools that have clear backpack policies besides schools that have clear backpack policies, or states that have the same thing, we already know CCISD is doing it, and an expert in Austin could explain it. Do clear backpacks make schools safer? They split on backpack policies. The school district wants to enhance security measures after the May 24th shooting in Uvalde. Clear backpack programs have become increasingly popular. However, some districts in Austin have opted not to pursue the policy, which experts say is largely driven by emotion rather than evidence. There's no evidence about that. If you have a clear backpack policy, you can clearly see weapons, drugs in there. Instead of just reaching in there and start digging everything out. Common sense perspective is to have a clear backpack policy or having no backpack policy. No backpacks, no purse, none of that. What about duffel bags? One person commented saying, what would work for duffel bags? There is actually, if you were to look at clear duffel bags on Google, clear duffel bag, Google it, then you go to their website, clearhandbags.com. They have the best variety of clear bags and backpacks. From $15 to $30. The clear duffel bag CH700. It says our clear duffel bag is perfect for carrying personal items to work in a secure area. Features a top zipper opening, clear exterior pocket, nylon handles, removable adjustable shoulder strap, suitable for men, women, correction, gym, retail, security, loss prevention. There's also a big one, clear backpack with a black trim. There's duffel bags. I mean, it's what people want. So that's the best option here. Still ahead, tornadoes. There was one city in Arkansas that didn't have it. So why didn't it happen? Lynn County investigates. But first, this woman says that one state is exempt from amusement ride law accidents, meaning they don't report it. You're about to meet that woman, and here's some examples. Stay with us. Monday, I brought you the story of one person who had enough of these accidents. He decided to just say, we need a law like this. And it does. One state did it, one person did it. Now, you're about to meet another person who did the same thing. But except, in one state, they're exempt from that law that you're about to hear. Why is that? Here's Keith Morrison.
America loves a thrill ride. We line up by the millions to take what appear to be huge risks to absorb spaceship-level G-forces because all the while we know we're absolutely safe. Aren't we? If you ask the people who run these big amusement parks, who build these high-tech thrills, then the answer is yes, of course, very safe.
Safer than walking down the street, safer than playing baseball, football, jumping on a trampoline, or driving your car.
Brett Lovejoy is the president of the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions.
We entertain over 320 million guests a year at America's amusement parks, and I think people can feel assured that when they visit one of America's amusement parks, they're in one of the safest places they can possibly be.
In fact, the industry says you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice than be killed in an amusement park, and the industry may well be right. But how can anyone know for sure? Because in several states, amusement parks are not required to report injuries or even deaths. The federal government has no oversight over these parks either. So it's been extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get any real numbers. But now, one woman is trying very hard to change that.
With a child, you can start to see how everything is magical in the world if we just look at it in that way.
It was March of 1999, and Kathy Fackler felt like she was reliving a childhood fantasy.
You walk into the front gates of that park that you've grown up with and that has meant, everything to you. And you walk into that park with your own child now.
It was her 5-year-old son, David Fackler's first big trip to a theme park. The Fackler family of La Jolla, California, Kathy, David, Stephen, and Mark, had finally taken their long-planned trip to nearby Disneyland.
We had been in the park all day and had a great time, and it was around dinner time.
Time, they told the boys, for one last ride. They chose the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And then it was the last moment of the last ride of a perfect day.
We came around the corner towards the platform, and the car makes a temporary stop before the unloading platform.
A temporary stop? David, 5 years old, remember, thought the ride was over. In Kathy's memory, what happened next plays back in horrifying slow motion. David did what he thought he was supposed to do. Even while his mother's arms held him in, he stuck his foot out the side of the car as if to exit. But then the car began to move again because the ride wasn't over yet.
The visitors who were waiting started yelling, "His foot's out, stop the ride, stop the ride." And I was sitting there with my arms around my kid's shoulders. It never occurred to me they were yelling at me.
The train was still moving, but David's foot was trapped inside the track underneath the car.
The next thing I knew, David was kind of clutching me and screaming, and that's it. I didn't even know how to describe. It just is so unreal.
A crowd gathered. David kept screaming. Minutes passed. It felt like hours. David Thackler's foot, stuck for 20 minutes between the track and the car, was torn in half. He had 4 surgeries, skin grafts, and lost all 5 toes.
In a moment, it turned into a dream, and it didn't become real for a very long time, even in the hospital, when we were there for almost a month.
While David recovered, Kathy looked for answers. Was the ride safe? Had any changes been made to it? Why was outside help so long in coming? Had there been other serious accidents on that ride? And what about on other rides? Well, David's accident might not have been the park's fault. Kathy Thackler says she ran into what seemed like a culture of secrecy whenever she brought up the accident. Did they report the accident?
There was no reporting requirement. There's no one to report accidents to.
In fact, Kathy says she was shocked to discover that in the state of California, big amusement parks like Disney, Six Flags, and Paramount were not required to report accidents to any agency, even if a rider dies.
Despite the fact that David screamed for an hour in the middle of Frontierland during business hours, no one from the press found out about it or wrote about it. And so it just does disappear.
Was her son's accident the only one that just seemed to disappear? No, she says. It turned out there were lots of them. For example, Disney never had to report what happened to Zipporah Jacob, a 43-year-old former molecular biologist. Her husband, Haim, says Zipporah is a different woman since she rode Disney's Indiana Jones attraction in 1995.
She was a totally healthy individual. She had never had any problem whatsoever. And during the ride, she felt pain in her back of her head. By the time she arrived in the hospital, she was in a coma.
Mr. Jacob says his once brilliant wife was so badly shaken up by the Indiana Jones ride that she suffered a near-fatal brain hemorrhage. And now, he says she must wear a shunt to drain fluids, must take dozens of pills every day, and will for the rest of her life, and is unable to work as a molecular biologist anymore. Disney declined our repeated offers to comment on camera, but did respond to our written questions. Regarding allegations of brain injuries resulting from its rides, the company said, quote, "It has never been confirmed that our attractions cause such injuries." But the Jacobs lawyer, Barry Novak, tells a different story.
We have found out that for the last approximately 4 years, there have been over 60 injuries, and at some point in time, the brain substance just cannot withstand those dynamics. It's sort of like shaken baby syndrome.
Novak says only a few of those 60 serious brain injuries occurred in Disney's parks, but he claims several Disney rides seem to cause other injuries. In fact, Novak says in 2 of his cases, Disney provided records showing that more than 600 head, neck, and back injury complaints were made to the company just about Indiana Jones and Splash Mountain in the past 3 years. But how many of those incidents did Disney report to Cal OSHA, the state safety agency?
The written report that I got back from Cal OSHA was there had been no reported injuries for those rides, at least for the year 2000-2001, which was the 2 years that they were supposed to be keeping records on a voluntary basis.
And he says there were hundreds more similar complaints about other rides. Disney settled with the Jacobs for an undisclosed sum in 1999, though the company denied liability or responsibility. But since then, Novak has taken on other cases against Disney. During one of them, less than 2 months ago, the judge scolded Disney for failing to turn over injury records. Willful bad faith, the judge called it. Disney denied the allegation, saying a clerical error had delayed release of the information. As for Kathy Fackler, she grew frustrated by what she claims was Disney's lack of cooperation, so she turned to the California state legislature instead.
Accidents should be treated as hard-earned lessons, not dirty secrets to be hidden away.
And after a year of tireless research, lobbying, and testifying, the California law changed. On January 1st, 2000, Kathy saw the rewards of her first long battle.
The law mandates that the parks have to report injuries to the state. They have to allow the state to come out and perform an accident investigation. They have to maintain the accident site just like a crime scene. They can't be cleaning up evidence before the state gets there.
Which they could do before.
Oh, sure.
Just this March, the Walt Disney Company shut down a ride after reporting 3 accidents in 3 weeks in the new Disney theme park. Disney says the company temporarily and voluntarily closed the attraction for adjustments after a few guests complained about the roughness of the ride. And just last week, Disney reopened an overhauled Roger Rabbit ride 10 months after a little boy was trapped beneath it and severely brain damaged. Disney says the ride was safe from the start, but just the same, it went beyond state orders to fix problems. Disney, saying it bases its reputation on safety, also erected more warning signs. But if disclosure was difficult to achieve in California, there's one state, America's theme park capital, where it's been almost impossible.
Florida has the largest segment of amusement park business of anywhere in the U.S.
Right here around Orlando, Florida, are 2 parks owned by Universal Studios, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, and 4 Disney theme parks. None of these parks is required to tell the public anything about accident records.
Those theme parks are exempt from the state law. They don't have to report any accidents, not even if a rider dies. And the consumer has no way of knowing how many injuries a ride at Disney World or Universal Studios Florida have caused to paying customers.
Nor does any government or consumer organization have any right to set one foot in any of these parks to inspect the rides for safety. The state has no involvement beyond an annual consultation. And why is that? Because in Florida, lawmakers have allowed the big theme parks to police safety themselves. Industry critics call it the Florida loophole.
I was deeply disturbed by the fact that this self-protection took precedence over safety.
Remember, the industry claims that theme parks are safe places to be, and this man agrees with them.
If it's not broken, don't try to fix it.
Florida Congressman Cliff Stearns chairs the House Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection. That's the very body that insists on federal standards for other consumer products, but has decided not to apply the same kind of federal standards to theme parks.
We have no statistics that shows there are any fatalities at Disney World in 28 years.
With all due respect, Congressman, how could you have statistics? You don't know. You have no oversight.
Do you know how many injuries have happened there?
Well, I just told you, they have not had any fatalities.
But in November of 2000, a patron was killed on this ride, Splash Mountain, when he inexplicably removed himself from the water ride at Disney World while it was still moving. The cause of death was ruled rider misconduct. Nonetheless, the death was officially unreported. Do you know how many injuries they've had?
Injuries they might have, but not of a nature that it's crippling for life.
Tell that to Barry Novak. He claims he has clients to prove otherwise.
People have suffered either serious head injuries such as bleeds in the brain or head, neck, and back injuries sufficient to require continuing medical care.
So the question to you then is, who are you representing? Are you representing the parks or are you representing the millions of people who go to the parks?
I'm representing good government.
In its response to our story, the Disney company wrote in part, "Defining what should be a reportable accident is not as easy as it may seem. Broadly worded definitions produce exaggerated and often inaccurate statistics, which can be misleading to the public." And the congressman worries about a legal free-for-all if entertainment companies, Disney included, are required to publicly report all of the data about accidents. He worries about lawyers, like Barry Novak.
Disney alone, for example, says
And rightly so. It has more than 1,000 engineers that are constantly fine-tuning these rides, looking at them to make sure they're safe.
Well, if it's so safe and you don't need to be concerned, why hide it?
And Kathy Fackler adds, won't patrons be safer, even if there are lawsuits?
They worry that data sharing is going to lead to the destruction of their $9 billion industry, and I think that data hiding is going to lead to the destruction of more families.
And so Kathy Fackler is campaigning for a new federal law authorizing the Consumer Product Safety Commission to inspect and oversee all permanent parks all across the country, including Florida. It's an industry that claims to be a very safe place to have fun, and it may well be. But now, as critics are demanding, prove it.
We want to see what the safety record is. We're loading very small children onto heavy machinery, open moving vehicles. That's a dangerous undertaking, and it demands a public accounting. That's all I'm asking for is a public accounting.
The common sense perspective is we want what's best for our kids. We want our kids safe. When it comes to these amusement rides, we want our kids safe when they go on these rides. We don't want to see them injured. And we never want to see people saying, well, we don't want to lose a lot of money. We don't want false statistics. I understand that. But if we were to Google up these accidents, there have been no accidents this year, so far this year. But the last year there were some, and during the pandemic. We're not going to look through all this because we still got a show to do, so we're going to just move on from that. Coming up next, the Doppler system. It is the best technology ever, except in one state, which was a county right across the street. Why didn't it work? Len Cannon is going to explain. Stay with us. Are you prepared for a tornado? If you are, you may be shocked as you hear this story from years ago. In Arkansas, there was a tornado. But what happened would stun everyone. One county didn't report it, didn't have any reporting tornado system, except for what happened. So, what was the cause of it? And why didn't they report it beforehand? You're about to meet some people who say, someone who says he was not authorized to report it. Here's Len Cannon.
Something horrible struck the town of Fort Smith, Arkansas on a sleepy Sunday night in April. It came from the skies with little warning. It terrorized a city of 71,000 people.
911 emergency.
When police dispatcher Tom Goins began his shift, it seemed like a typical springtime evening.
Oh, just your normal calls, barking dogs, loud music, family disturbances, stuff like that.
But what Goins and the town couldn't know is that time was running out. Shortly after 11 o'clock that night, the routine phone calls stopped and chaos began.
My neighbor's house has been blown away and I just hollered at them, they're inside.
When all those calls started coming in, then I knew something had happened.
Oh my God! Mom, look!
In the dark of night, no one sees what is hitting them, but they can hear it.
God bless. I don't know if you can hear this on the thing, you can hear the roar of it.
Then, a flash of lightning reveals the image of a monster. A massive black tornado in the middle of town. It roars across homes and businesses for 7 miles.
Oh.
And through it all, tornado sirens that could have warned people in town to take cover will never sound.
The twisting winds rip up trees and crumble entire buildings. They toss a semi-truck 20 feet into the air and slam it broadside into this building, caving in a section of the wall. When it was all over, 2 children lay dead, 1,000 homes destroyed, and a town left asking a single question: why?
Why did it pick their city? Why did it kill their children? And above all, city officials are asking why the National Weather Service failed to warn them in time. With the most sophisticated radar in the world, technology that usually spots tornadoes early, how could it happen here in the middle of Tornado Alley? Was there too much faith in technology? Was human intelligence ignored?
The fact is that for one reason or another, we were not notified.
City Administrator Strib Boynton was among the first to arrive on the scene that night.
My first impression when I drove down the avenue was, my God, the avenue's gone.
Like many here, Boynton claims the National Weather Service failed the people of Fort Smith.
Our entire tornado warning system relies upon being alerted by the Tulsa Weather Service of pending tornadoes. We did not receive the warning until the tornado was actually hitting us.
The Weather Service in Tulsa began tracking the storm 2 hours earlier. Steve Piltz coordinated the effort that night.
It showed characteristics of some rotation, but it was very obviously a very severe thunderstorm.
Piltz and his team of meteorologists rely on state-of-the-art Doppler radar to track the storm. It cost the Weather Service $500 million in more than 10 years to develop, and it provides amazingly detailed images, a powerful tool to predict tornadoes. Doppler is so good, the Weather Service cut back its field offices nationwide, putting more resources into its Doppler centers. By 8:57 p.m., images from Doppler convinced Piltz's team to issue the first tornado warning in southeast Oklahoma, 80 miles from Fort Smith. Half an hour later, a tornado forms. By 9:30, the storm is still tracking northeast. Piltz and his team issue another warning, again half an hour before the second tornado appears. The storm is now just 50 miles from Fort Smith. By 10:30, it is just 30 miles away. Police in Fort Smith receive the only phone call they will get from the Weather Service that night. But it's not from headquarters in Tulsa. It's from a local forecaster in Fort Smith.
But at this time, it's just about headed this way. This is a dangerous storm that is approaching, and there is a tornado watch, and we may have to issue a tornado warning. Okay, appreciate it. But there is no warning yet. You'll get it, of course, when there's a warning.
The voice is that of Warren Hadley, a 25-year Weather Service veteran. He is also watching the storm on his radar, a much less sophisticated and older model. Unlike his superiors in Tulsa, Hadley is in Fort Smith, directly in the path of the storm, and he is worried.
I thought that this was going to move through Fort Smith.
And did you think at that point it was a big storm?
I knew it was a big storm.
Did you potentially think it could do a lot of damage?
I knew it had the potential to have a tornado in it.
But even though he's closest to the storm, Hadley is powerless to issue a tornado warning. With Doppler, the new goal of the Weather Service is to issue warnings only from regional centers like Tulsa. So Hadley can only tell Tulsa what he sees. It's up to them to issue a warning from 88 miles away. By 10:33 p.m., the National Weather Service issues a tornado warning for northern Leflore County, including the town of Arcoma. That's critical because Arcoma isn't just close to Fort Smith. It's just across the street. That is Arcoma. This is Fort Smith. But the Weather Service doesn't warn Fort Smith for another 35 minutes.
If they are so close, how is it you could issue a tornado warning for Leflore County and not for Fort Smith at the same time?
The typical tornado lasts just a few minutes, and to suddenly blanket a bunch of counties because of that storm would not be effective, because then you end up with a lot of false alarms. You end up with a lot more warning out there than you need, and it'll be the cry wolf syndrome.
71,000 people, and you felt like you would have been crying wolf if you issued a tornado warning earlier?
No, if the data had suggested that we had a developing tornado there, that's what would have been issued.
It's now 10:54, and although an earlier tornado watch remains in effect, there's still no warning, and Piltz's Doppler radar has convinced him the storm is dying. But 14 minutes later, everything changes. His office suddenly issues a tornado warning for Fort Smith. But by then, the storm has knocked out power. A computer and a special hotline to the Tulsa Weather Service are both dead. Police never get the word. Tornado warning sirens never go off. Except for those in town who own special weather radios, the tornado hits without warning.
Traveling northeast.
They never got the warning, Steve, and the siren was never activated.
We can't deal with what happens on the other end. We put out the warning, and it goes out these different ways, and then it's up to the community to then to have develop the different ways to receive the warning and to activate the warning system.
That storm took out over 1,000 buildings, injured a lot of people, killed 2 people. And you're sitting here telling me you can't be responsible for what happens on the other end?
The National Weather Service issues the warning, it tracks the storms, it provides forecasts, outlooks, and watches, but then it comes down to the city to actually activate their siren system based on whatever criteria they set.
And that has been the official line of the Weather Service, which defended itself in a news conference a month after the storm.
I think the Weather Service worked pretty well in this particular storm. The people of Fort Smith, Arkansas were not caught by surprise.
But that view was not shared by Warren Hadley, the forecaster who was no longer allowed to issue a warning.
I gave them the information that I had, and to this day, I don't know why that they did not issue a warning.
Hadley says his bosses asked him not to speak to Dateline because he tells a far different story.
Why he didn't issue it, I don't know.
Based on the information that you had and based on your experience, some 20 years in this area watching weather, should there have been a tornado warning issued at 10:45?
I would have issued a tornado warning.
Hadley says on the night of the storm, more than half an hour before the tornado hit Fort Smith, he called the Tulsa Weather Service to suggest just that.
I indicated to them that I thought that they should issue a warning. I said, I'm ready for a warning for northern Sebastian and Crawford County. That was the statement that I made.
That includes Fort Smith.
Right.
His words were, quote, I'm waiting for the tornado warning. And if he's telling the truth, why wasn't that warning heeded from him who's in Fort Smith?
And that's not a recommendation. It was an inquiry based on will you issue a tornado or a severe thunderstorm warning, and he was wanting to get that information in and provide any input that he had to the situation.
Warren Hadley told us that if he had the authority to issue a tornado warning, he would have done so 20 minutes before you issued yours.
Well, and that's Warren being a trained, experienced National Weather Service person. That's something that I would say if he says it, that's true.
Why didn't you take the initiative, call the police dispatch in Fort Smith and say, sound the alarm, it is my judgment that we're in trouble?
Because I don't have that authority. That would be like you doing it. That is not my job.
In fact, Hadley is right. Forecasters closest to the storm, sometimes with years of experience, may no longer have the power to issue tornado warnings on their own. The Weather Service has stripped 112 offices around the country of all or part of their authority to issue tornado warnings because they are now covered by Doppler. Doppler is the best technology out there, but it can only see so far. The National Research Council, an independent group of scientists, cited coverage gaps in parts of 5 states. And 6 months before the tornado hit Fort Smith, the Weather Service itself found the area may receive poorer severe weather warning services because it is too far on the fringe of Tulsa's Doppler radar. Piltz says Doppler radar did its job that night.
The radar data that was collected seemed to be consistent with what we'd expect for that type of storm.
The Weather Service has no plans to restore power to issue warnings to people like Warren Hadley, but it is planning to put a Doppler system in Fort Smith sometime next year or the year after. Still, people in Fort Smith aren't convinced that Doppler alone will protect them. The deaths of 2 small children and dozens of injuries around town will remind them for a long time just how vulnerable they are.
I feel very, very bad about the fact that the National Weather Service did not issue a warning for Fort Smith earlier than it did. The people in this area are not happy. They have a right not to be happy. I live here and I work for the Weather Service, but I can't say that I'm happy either. And the questions that you've asked, I'll be trying to answer them a long time.
A Weather Service survey team has begun planning for a Doppler site somewhere near Fort Smith. In the meantime, the city is still cleaning up, but it's expected to take 3 or 4 years before Fort Smith is back to normal.
There could be some common sense right there. You don't need to throw in an alarm here, but it's kind of like asking 3-year-olds. I should be in charge of this. No, you should be. No, I'm in charge. It's like picking whoever's in charge here. Know your tornado warnings and make sure you know them beforehand. That way you won't be confused. That way you won't be confused and this and that won't happen. What's the common sense perspective? no tornado warnings, and if you're in charge of issuing the alerts, that person is in charge. Period. I mean, if you could predict a storm coming, you are a sorcerer. You know, why don't you come work for Channel 3? I mean, when it comes to weather, I take Dale Nelson, Sharon Ray, Bill Alexander, Stephanie L., Mariah Gallegos, Kirsten Weller, Alan Holt, Carlos Smith. I take 9 meteorologists in Corpus Christi very, very seriously. I watch them every day. I know if it's going to rain, shine, tornado. I know it all. You think I watched the damn news? How do you think the show was created 6 years ago? To give you guys some common sense and help you guys understand certain aspects. I mean, people won't be acting like kids. That's the common sense perspective. That is. Before we go on break here, I'm going to show you a story that you'll see coming soon. I'm going to have time to show you, but I'll just tell it to you. Coming up next week on the broadcast, I'm going to tell you a story about a 7-year-old who had a lot of surgery for his ear. But what happened next would even stun the medical experts. This doctor put the wrong type of medicine in the boy. Now, instead of fighting the family in court, they told the truth. How will the family react? And the question, are other hospitals doing the same thing? Have they issued warnings like this? A lesson from Ben. That's coming soon. That's coming next week. Also coming soon, a story about noisy neighbors and the Northrop missile cruise. That's all coming soon. Coming up next, one woman was down on the train tracks. We're going to tell you what you can do not to so these accidents don't happen again. Then, we're also going to show you how to beat the polygraph test. Stay with us. Are you ever tired of hearing that train whistle? It's actually a mess whistle. But are you going tired of it? You're about to hear some cases that say that they're tired of it, and hear one state that has a whistleblowing law. So what can you do to prevent these accidents again? Here's Tom Jarrell. Mind you, this I don't have the full version of this, so this is just a portion of what this person uploaded.
But here in Martinsville, there was no warning whistle, no close escape. The boys perished on the tracks, beneath the wheels in a terrifying death.
I don't care if there's a law or not. If you think you can save a life, do it. I don't care if it may set yourself up for a lawsuit. It may save yourself some sleepless nights.
After the funerals of the two boys, Norfolk Southern faced the same questions about not sounding warning whistles on trestles. Attorney Wiley Mitchell explains the railroad's policy at the time.
We have not traditionally sounded warning whistles and are not legally obligated to sound warning whistles. Where we have no reason to believe people are going to be, and where people who are on our property without authority for their own purposes.
The rules remain the same until after the Martinsville tragedy. That's when the memo that Mrs. Nixon had sent to the Johnson family suddenly became public. It was used as a legal weapon against the railroad in a lawsuit filed by the families of the two boys who had died in the second accident. You, in effect, exposed a legal time bomb for them.
Yes, I did. I guess the railroad feels like every time someone is injured on the
track or the train, or the train kills somebody, and this memo comes up, it's my fault.
3 years after she first had leaked the memo, railroad detectives discovered Patricia Nixon was the source of the problem, and she was summarily fired.
You fired a woman with 14 years of spotless service to the railroad because she called attention to a safety problem?
No. What we did was to discharge a woman for a blatant act of disloyalty.
Anytime they have to pay money, heads will roll, in this case mine.
As for the controversial safety memo, the railroad successfully moved in court to have it sealed from public view. The memo was written by Chief Counsel Wiley Mitchell.
Why did the railroad want that sealed? Is the railroad embarrassed by this memo?
We're not hiding the memo.
The railroad wanted it sealed in the settlement of the lawsuit.
The memorandum is a confidential legal communication between an attorney and a client. I, as an attorney, am not privileged to comment on.
The railroad insists safety comes before profits at Norfolk Southern. Nonetheless, the company has shifted gears on warning whistles.
What we have done is to try to identify trestles at which we have had at least one accident over the last 5 or 10 years. With that simple criteria, we erect whistle posts and have begun blowing the whistle.
Doesn't that mean, Mr. Mitchell, you've got to have an injury or a death before the railroad will begin blowing the whistle?
No, it means that we've got to have some justification for blowing the whistle in order to establish the pattern of doing so.
An injury or a death?
That's the present criteria, yes.
Now Norfolk Southern trains sound warning whistles on trestles with proven records of danger, including High Bridge and the Martinsville Crossing.
Makes me feel great. When I heard about it, I was told, well, Ms. Nixon, I know you've lost your job, but in reality, you are saving lives and you are helping people. So I feel good about that. If it saves one life, it was worth it.
You bet. Someone should hire that brave woman. Tom, why aren't there laws? Doesn't everyone want a whistle to blow at a danger point?
Not at all, Barbara. In the state of Virginia, they have a whistleblowing law, but it's local option, and only one county has voted to require the trains to blow whistles as they approach trestles. People who live along the tracks don't want to hear whistles being blown all the time. They object to it.
So what can one do?
Well, the railroad certainly could put up more dire no trespassing signs. The ones that are up now are very ineffective, I think.
Let people know how dangerous it can be, and parents should know, everyone should know, you don't play on a track even if you think it may be abandoned, right?
Very dangerous places.
Okay.
500 people a year are killed on them, and that's more than are killed in plane crashes, for example.
Thank you, Tom.
There's common sense perspective for you. So, common sense alert. People complain, you don't want to hear train tracks. You hear whistle. Stop it! Stop it! It's too loud! It's too loud! Governor! I don't want to hear whistles. Make a law right now. My ears are bleeding. I can't do this. I'm losing my mind here. I get it. But they have the right to blow the whistle. If you don't want to hear it, get your ass some ear muffs. Get some ear plugs. You don't want to hear it? Leave. Leave your area. You want to live on the other side of the train tracks? Don't live there. Go live somewhere else where there ain't no train tracks. That's common sense perspective. Don't go complain to your congressman while they're saying, hey, I do not want to hear those. I want a law passed. That should have been put in place. I mean, let's look at the anti-whistle. State of Virginia, they have a whistleblowing law. There's the Railroad Safety Act. It's the Federal Railroad Safety Act that was passed back in 2019. So what can you do? No trespassing signs, and parents, common sense for you. Don't let your child play on a railroad, even though you think it's abandoned. That's common sense expected for you. Now let's talk about lie detector tests. Can you even beat a lie detector test? Let's find out.
From our... This is a lie detector test in progress. The spikes and dips can unmask a lie, maybe even a murderer, at least to mark them. Tonight, Rob Stafford puts himself to the test with some surprising results.
And Rob Stafford will do just that when we return. Stay with us. Before we continue on with the lie detector test, let's update you on Uvalde. Just hours ago, the Justice Department is looking into hundreds of evidence and interviewing 200 witnesses. They also say they told families they will offer extra support ahead of the 1-year mark of the massacre next month, including trauma therapy for those affected and assistance around those gatherings. Evidence collected is said to include videos, photos, as well as interview transcripts and training materials. The mayor previously told CNN he was shut out from the county, and state investigators has questioned whether there should be a cover-up. There should have been a cover-up. It was something that should have been done. That's Uvalde, and in our special community break, which is going to happen on the anniversary of the shooting. Uvalde, 1 year later, what the hell's going on? That's our 1 year. That's our special coming up soon, coming up May 24th. So look for that. Now here's Rob Stafford with his lie detector results.
I can teach a person how to control every tracing on the chart in less than 5 minutes.
Doug Williams is a former polygraph examiner for the Oklahoma City Police Department. He now sells manuals over the internet that teach people how to pass polygraph tests because he says he's seen too many innocent lives ruined by false results.
Now, just do what I told you on your muscle exercises.
We won't disclose the specifics of what Williams taught me, but he basically showed me some muscle and breathing techniques to use at certain times. It seemed simple enough, but after I failed to trick the machine the day before, I highly doubted I could beat the polygraph today.
Are you now in the state of Florida?
No. That's a truthful answer. I'm in the state of Oklahoma, but I applied some of the techniques and successfully made my answer look like a lie.
Are you lying when you said you never violated any traffic laws?
No. Here, I lied and used some other techniques, but this time the polygraph chart showed a truthful response.
No reaction whatsoever, just a nice, calm, even breathing pattern.
In other words, I fooled the machine.
You taught me that in 5 minutes. We taught you how to control every tracing on that chart, whether you're telling the truth or whether you're not, on demand, anytime, anywhere, and we did it in less than 5 minutes.
Don't the experienced examiners know all these tricks?
I don't teach people how to beat the machine. I teach people how to produce for the polygraph examiner exactly what he expects to see from a truthful subject.
Aren't you helping criminals by making this information available?
Possibly so. Look, you and I both know what I'm doing, so why don't we quit using this antiquated witchcraft? It does not...
Doesn't work. But there is a thing called countermeasures, which lie detector measures could detect. If you've seen the Steve Wilkos show, where he does a lie detector test, you may have heard Dave Riberkoff said, subject use countermeasures, or extreme deception indicated. Extreme deception indicated basically means deception indicated. Not deceptive means you're telling the truth. Deception means you're lying. Extreme deception means you're not telling the truth. I mean, the actual definition of extreme deception indicated. The actual meaning of this is the examiner was found deceptive in one or more of the permitted questions asked during the test. Significant changes in involuntary, physiological reactions were constantly recorded, which can be significantly explained as deception indicators. That's what extreme deception is. Now let's look at the countermeasures of this. One of the countermeasures that I've seen is when somebody sits on the countermeasures. So let's say this hat is the countermeasures pad at which you sit on. So I'm going to place it on this table right here. So I'm sitting on the countermeasures pad. And what I'm doing, and you may see this a lot, squeeze, 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 squeeze. You know what that means? That means you're squeezing your butt cheeks. I mean, if you Google how to beat a lie detector test, lots of answers will show you. And what you've seen right there, that could be an answer right there. But if you're squeezing your butt cheeks, it's the countermeasures pad you sit on. Many people might say, oh, that's fake, that's this, that's that. That's the chart, not mine, not the examinees. Danny Rubikoff explains this, and I would show you some clips, but they're going to block me in this episode. So I just thought I would explain it to you so that way y'all can understand. And if you want to see some episodes, some clips of Dan Rubikoff and his lie detector test, so you can get a better understanding, I'll make a playlist, and we'll have the link in the description below. And we'll be right back with our viral break. Stay tuned. Before we get to our viral break, there's one case of bullying that's happening in Monroe Public Schools. Take a look.
That's right. Gary's family shared that they do not feel that enough was done at Monroe Middle School to protect both their son and many other students.
A nightmare without my son. I never, ever seen this coming.
Last Monday, Gary Ross, an 8th grader at Monroe Middle School, took his own life after being bullied. His family said he had been picked on by several kids at school after he and his girlfriend broke up.
And he was reading me the text that the kid texted him and said that the kid told him that he better show up at school Monday because he was going to beat the out of him.
Both of Gary's parents said they had spoken to the school about bullying concerns, but that no action was ever taken.
I brought it to their attention. My wife brought it to their attention. Many a times we brought it to their attention. And nothing was done. Nothing ever was done.
Now, as far as we feel, Monroe Middle School has Gary Ross's blood on their hands because they did absolutely nothing. I don't care what they say, that they say they've done something or they're doing something. They've not.
His parents said they were told stories of fights in the bathroom, bus, and more, to a point Gary asked to stay home from school the days leading up to his death.
There is no security in that bathroom. And as far as I'm concerned, I know there should never be a camera in a bathroom, but I think there should be a security guard in that bathroom from the time that school opens to the time that school closes.
As of Tuesday morning, they also shared that the school never reached out to them since his death.
He hasn't been in touch with me. School, he ain't been in touch with me at all. Ain't nobody at the school, nobody's been in touch with us.
Superintendent Andrew Shaw said the school reached out Tuesday and that they will release more information on their response at an upcoming date.
My son would be alive today if it wasn't for the threatening and all this. Yes, I want something done.
The family also shared that they will be having a protest outside of the middle school on Friday at 11 a.m. In the newsroom, Derek Hyde, NBC 24 News.
The blame game. That's what it is right there, is the blame game here. Like he said, the protest game on Friday, and we'll provide you updates as it goes along. Finally tonight, our viral break. Here's a question for you. As a teacher, what would you do if you heard your student talking back to you? It's exactly what happened in this video right here, with over 6 million views on 99 racks. Let's take a look. Alright, now let's take a look.
Is you doing your work?
Barb, do you think I can't multitask? Do you think I'm slow? Do you think I can't talk and do work? Chill out. Is it impossible to talk and write? No, I can't even talk and write because I'm talking to you, and I feel like you're offending me. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard to write and talk. I don't know what type of stupid dude you think I am, but I'm not that one. So I'm gonna get back to doing my homework. Okay, make a call home. Matter of fact, I'll call it right now.
Oh, excuse me. You're gonna ask to use my phone? What?
Who's gonna call my phone? Oh my
Did
God.
that say
Go
you?
call it.
What?
Oh my God. This is third grade. I'm getting my work done. So call her and tell her that. The only reason you don't want to call her right now is because you want to tell her a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't defend myself for. Oh my gosh. She think I was born yesterday? I'm gonna go back to doing my homework. I'm done. Shown below are images of the skeletal structure of the front limbs of 6 animals. Human, crocodile, whale, cat, bird, and bat. Each animal has a similar set of bones. Color code each of the bones according to this key. So I got a color code.
Okay.
So I need color pencils.
Okay.
But if you... Thank you. Are you done? I'm not even trying to be disrespectful. It's just the fact that you staring at me and I can't get my work done. And I'm getting frustrated, Carl. Getting frustrated. And you're still staring at me. What's going on?
You know, here's the thing. I guess I've never had anyone talk that way. So, yeah, I'll back away, Keith.
You hurt her feelings. What feelings did I hurt?
You're the first that's ever acted like that.
You gonna make her... Have you not been to this class every day, Barb?
You know what? We're not going to get into it. But you'll keep showboating.
Something what? That I'm doing my work? Okay.
Hey, Barb. I finished the packet. Thank you.
Whoa. Okay. Here's where the common sense alert would be put in place. You never ever want to talk to your teacher like that. Don't you ever do that. They have a diploma from the Crown University or College. You don't ever talk to them like that. You don't talk back to your teachers. You don't talk back to your parents, your principal, whatever you know what, Ross. You don't talk back to your teacher. You don't talk to your teacher like that. That's very disrespectful. Very disrespectful. And what that person did was very unacceptable. And 6 million people agreed with that. And I certainly agree with that. And that's Give Me a Break for this Wednesday going to Thursday. Come up with Throwback Thursday. I don't know what we're going to do. I got no idea. We're going to continue our fast food experiences by looking at one of the videos that I have not showed you. I will show you a preview, there's not enough time, so I'm going to save that for you on Throwback Thursday. So, I'll see you again for Friday and on GMB Friday. Do you know where your kids are? We're going to take you to a place called The Rave. What is it? We'll show you some hidden camera look. I hope you join me. Have a good night.